What's the most disgusting thing you've ever discovered about a friend? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. He started becoming Twitter famous and left his wife. Then hooked up with some fangirl that was married and quit his job to focus on creating content and be a full-time influencer. He's now selling bullshit bird feeders and sweatpants on TikTok. Answer: I have an old friend who is a lifestyle influencer. Started on the Foster blogs. She and her husband, ex-husband of 12 years, still play pretty families for the money. Their entire income is based on her social media and his preacher media, all about sacred marriage and parenting. They have become the worst people I know. I just can't explain the sadness in that world. It's a good thing to realize most social influences are not authentic. Edit: I'm not outing them. They're not abusing their children or terrible parents. Outing them would definitely ruin their children's lives. Seriously, pick one, and if it's not them, it's probably a similar situation. Story 2. She was sleeping with my boyfriend. They have a child together now, but he cheated on her with her aunt LOL. Story 3. Best friend from school, after 12 years of questionable choices, anger tantrums, and stalker-like behavior towards women, decided the woman I had fallen for, and vice versa, was destined to be his by fate. He cornered her alone in the house and professed this predestiny while I was at work. We all lived in the same house. Showed her some old teenage drawing and said he knew years prior to meeting they would be together. She gave him the news that she and I were in a new relationship, and he began sticking screws into the couch and behaving erratically. He called a house meeting weeks later, and in front of both she and I and another housemate, said he was planning on eliminate us both in our sleep. He described the methods for each of us in detail. We left the house and moved out immediately. She and I were racked with paranoia and nightmares for months while living in another location. Pretty terrible way to ruin a friendship and terrify the supposed predestined love of your life. Answer: stalkers escalating their delusions are scary. I was talking to this lady and she mentioned she had a stalker get out of jail this week. I told her she better get some mace or something. She said, "Oh, I already have a knife and a gun." I'm glad she's at least protecting herself, but that's such a crazy thing to have to deal with. The dude just saw her working at the store one day and then started coming in regularly, convinced he was meant to be with her. Story 4. A few years back, at the time close, friend of mine started posting all over social media about how her brother had gotten arrested and how she was praying for him to get out and he didn't deserve it, blah, blah. Made it seem like he got arrested for something really minor. When I Googled his full name, it turned out he and 3 of his friends committed a violent dislike crime. Answer: that's reminded me of a situation 20 years ago. I had a friend who was dating a guy. We found out he beat a homeless man to passing. I insisted she get away. She didn't. Maybe 6 months later, the cops called me and said, "Friend has been shot and is the hospital. Do you mind coming in for an interview?" I did. They said she was dead. One of the last texts she sent was to me. It was something like, "I'm telling him tonight, wish me luck." She found out she was pregnant. They shot her in the stomach and she crawled almost 200 yards to her car. Neighbors said they say 2 men standing near that car, and that was an hour before they made an official police report. It was an accident. Story 5. Behaviorally disgusting. Someone I used to be friends with pushed her trauma onto her kids so much that she convinced him he had the same trauma. He ended up in a psychiatric facility, and once he was, she played the pity card of, "Oh, my poor baby," when I knew what was actually going on. When I wouldn't feed into it, she started a whole mess of drama by relentlessly flirting with my husband and trying to tell him I wasn't right for him. He didn't fall for it. He and I both cut her off completely. Answer: my mother-in-law habitually locked 2 of the sons in a bedroom with her, got them high and on LSD, and would go off on long tangents of her childhood being spent violation to guilt trip them into providing for the family. Oldest and youngest. One was 5th grade to senior while the other was 3, until I kidnapped him when he was 9. I'd do it again. Anyway, the younger one was all fudge up and ended up in psych. Wasn't even the meds. It was that this was during the calmest part of that woman's life. He grew up otherwise unoccasted, well-fed, nice clothes, etc. Never lived with a grown man that wasn't a brother. The LSD had given him the actually memories of the horror show. He knew it wasn't real, and he grew up remembering all the details. This woman had 5 kids total over 20 years, and in the middle of this changed her degree path from childhood education to sociology of trauma. Story 6. At a festival, my friend's favorite band were playing. When they came on stage, she pissed herself with excitement. Her boyfriend felt bad for her, so he pissed himself too. They were wearing welly boots, which caught all their piss, so they enjoyed their gig in warm, piss-filled wellies together. Later that night, they both tried to come into my tent to hang out. I didn't let them. Love is weird. Story 7. That he was an animal abuser. He was having a party in his backyard, and me and my friend heard rustling in his shrub garden. It seemed like a big animal, and we asked him what was going on, and he told me that's his dog, that he doesn't give a shoot about BC. He's getting a new puppy soon. This poor dog had been so brutalized that it wouldn't come out of the bushes. I rang a friend that could lift the dog, and he came over and let the guy know we would be taking his dog right then. I found a new home for Smokey, and he was happy again. Story 8. Became friends with a guy at work. Real religious guy, adopted kids, part-time pastor, the works. We set up some get-togethers, but they always fell through. Luckily, he ended up getting fired at work for falling asleep on the job. We stayed in contact for a bit before we slowly just drifted apart. A few years later, I get a text from a former coworker telling me to look at the news. The former friend was arrested for raping his own children and foster children. Spending a long time, will deserve sentence in jail. Answer: I go to a weekly pool party in the summer. It has been going for years and years. A bunch of friends hanging out, eating good food and playing water volleyball. Nothing competitive, just silly fun. I was a newer friend, and this was a well-established group. Well, I didn't like one guy who had apparently been going for a few years. His serves were way too aggressive for such a laid-back game. Over a couple of years, he made an effort to be friends with me, and so did his girlfriend. So much so that my husband and I went on a double date with them to a very nice steakhouse after the pool season had ended. A couple of months later, turns out this guy had been caught up in a sting by local and federal law enforcement for soliciting a minor across state lines. Horrified doesn't even begin to describe my emotions, but it did teach me to trust my instincts better. Story 9. Not sure if this is disgusting, but definitely terrible. He was someone from an adjourning friend group. Girl went missing for over 20 years, and I've always suspected he had some form of involvement because she was last seen going over to a friend's house and he was there. Elevator CCTV shows her going there, but not leaving. I was told he refused to cooperate with the police at the time. They just said she left in the middle of the night. She was said to have her camera and MacBook when she disappeared. Now, decades later, police found that the laptop pinged at his family home because he gave it to his dad, apparently, and it was connected to Wi-Fi. There was a whole takedown investigation, and he was let free after 2 years. He claimed that she overdosed on heroin, I think, and died. They carried her in a suitcase down the stairs to avoid being on CCTV and burned her body in the jungle. The other friend that was there is currently on the run somewhere in another country. The fallout was wild because all his friends on Facebook defended him fiercely. I shared a news article about it on my Facebook, and our mutual friend commented, "Fudge you, that's my best friend." The rest posted statuses that said we should not share news about it or discuss it. Fiercely defended. They don't care what he did. Her poor parents had nothing to bury. Answer: a friend of mine was found dead, shot in the back. His father became obsessed with finding the killer. For about a year, he paid for billboards, his son's face with a $10,000 reward for any information that could lead to the murderer. The investigation became heavily focused on the so-called best friend. A Facebook post was made by the county that the best friend is in custody. The father shared it. Multiple people came to the comments to defend the man in custody, saying he would never do that and he's not that kind of person. People still to this day defend him and say he was wrongly accused, even after the murderer admitted he shot him in the back over a heated argument about owing money. I feel bad for his father. I can tell the passing of his son has fully consumed his life. Story 10. He take down his girlfriend in Costa Rica about 5 years before I met him, worked with him daily for like 6 months, nearly shoot a brick when I saw his face on the news. Nice guy, all things considered. Wouldn't have ever thought he'd do something like that, did it? Ah, you said disgusting. I read that as disturbing. This was pretty disgusting too, what he did to her. Story 11. He used to blow his load under his computer desk onto the wall and never cleaned it up. He wiped back to front and became angry when 3 of us made fun of him. Good old shoot nuts. Story 12. My friend started dating someone who openly bragged about having intimacy with animals. I told him I couldn't be around him, and he called me a bigot for not accepting his lifestyle. Pretty sure he was fudge dogs too. Story 13. A coworker that I was starting to become friends with applied for a higher-up job, and then it was found out he was caught in an online pedo ring during an FBI sting, and our whole workplace found out due to his updated background check. Story 14. My friend would take out her daily wear contacts every single night and throw them on the floor in the same corner of her room next to her nightstand. The mountain of contacts genuinely shocked me to my core. Another friend never took them out, like kept her contacts in 247. Story 15. She had HIV and was sleeping around with random men. She didn't tell them. She said if they took off the condom and got it, it was their own fault. Story 16. He was a tipsy driver, gave people fake names, got mad at his wife for giving the hospital his real name when his liver failed. I learned all this after he got so fudge up, lost his footwear while boating. Then he marooned me on an island after doing a bunch of cocaine while drinking bourbon. Story 17. My friend is seeing a man who did time for raping a 15-year-old and is a registered intimacy offender. The authorities consider him dangerous. Story 18. I visited his home once. There were roaches everywhere, and I mean everywhere, crawling all over the walls, the floors, the couch, the TV, everything. I had never seen such an infestation before. It looked like something out of a horror movie. He didn't seem to think it was weird. Story 19. A friend of mine who has been my first boyfriend and then one of my best friends during adolescence just decided to say to everyone around my city, including high school people, that I was selling my body for substances at 15 euro for plant substance. In a small city where this type of dramas can get you into serious troubles. He wasn't my friend anymore when I discovered this, like almost a year ago. Now I'm 24. So I was not shocked, but like, come on, bro. Did you really sunk so low? I haven't any type of respect for him anymore. Story 20. Me, and another male friend once tried some gay things. I didn't really like it, but apparently he did. Every once, and then he would ask me to do some of those things again, and I always refused. The last time he tried to convince me with money, and I refused. And while talking, his tongue slipped, and I found out he asked me for pleasure every time his girlfriends broke up with him. Story 21. In a child SA case involving someone very near and dear to me, they sided with the abuser. I have never made the decision to cut someone off so fast in my life. Answer. Similar, but the family member was given an ultimatum, and she chose the pedophile. Visits the convicted pedophile yearly with her son. Makes us so sick and anxious that we can't protect her son, but I hope he's safe. Makes us sad because the person who gave the ultimatum did it to protect themselves and their family, and she lashed out them for making her choose. Completely bonkers, being vague for obvious reasons, but you're right. It's an easy choice to walk away from people like that if that's who you're aligning yourself with. Story 22. I found out that a friend I hadn't seen in a few years went to jail for intimacy crimes, statutory violation, I think. Turns out he was dating high school girls. We were in our 30s. Story 23. He completely fabricated his life. We'd known each other since high school, but after we stopped going to school and working at the same place, we didn't see each other often, and our friendship was largely virtual. His life took a horrible turn. Cancer in the family, having to care for his nieces and quit his job to do so, but then deciding to go back to school to better himself. Got a degree, started a new, really awesome job, got a girlfriend, even sent me pictures of her, went on trips to see her, long distance. I started getting suspicious. I did some investigating of my own and discovered that everything was fake, but we had plans to go to a concert festival the weekend I found everything out. I was young and dumb, and even though everything in me was screaming not to go, I did. He drove. He talked to me about how him and his girlfriend had broken up. He took a selfie of us and made it his profile pic to make her jealous. He pretended his tooth got knocked out, saving me from a crowd surfer. By the time we got in the car to go home, I was scared. I was getting a really concerning vibe. He wasn't starting the car and we had a 2-hour drive home. Then he just started breaking down, stared at me and said, "Promise me you'll never leave me." My heart was beating so fast and I was sweating. I told him of course I wouldn't leave him because I was afraid to say anything else. He drove us home crying and going 30-40 mph over the speed limit. I thought I was going to die. He dropped me off that night and I blocked him on everything. I've never spoken to him again. I still get freaked out thinking about it, but I also feel guilty because he clearly needed help. But I'd spent a lot of years of my life trying to help him and support him through struggles. And that night my gut told me that he'd made an elaborate, fake life to try to earn my admiration and romantic feelings. The whole situation makes me feel sick, but sad. Story 24. Not friends anymore, but he turned out to have explicit images of children. Blocked him, obviously. He will be imprisoned for a very long time. Answer, OMG, same here. In 2013, my husband and I were on a trip with my mother, and she asked after my first boyfriend, who I had later become friends with and kept in touch with on Facebook. I was surprised I couldn't find his account, but what I did find was news articles about him being arrested for possession of almost 1,000 pieces of child-adult content after a 1.5-year FBI sting. He was sentenced in 2017 to 48 months in prison and 15 years supervised release. Story 25. How filthy there were. A group of us gals went to our friend's apartment. They opened the door, and a sour smell slapped my nostrils. I asked what it was, and they responded, "IDK, probably the fridge." What? Turns out their refrigerator was filled with moldy food and stale food. The bathroom was a crime scene. A trash can filled to the brim with used feminine products, mildew-covered shower, toilet was a biohazard, and the bedroom living room, friend has a studio, had scattered Coke bottles everywhere and a giant hole in the mattress with even more Coke bottles inside. I was uncomfortable, grossed out, and concerned. I took them aside and asked if they were okay. What's going on? I got a fudge off, it's my place. I can do what I want. I never went back, and the friendship fizzled out. Story 26. He cheated on his girlfriend, gave her chlamydia, slipped the medication in her food so she didn't find out. Story 27. His dad was a K-9 officer and had multiple dogs that lived with them. He admitted to me during a pep rally that he liked to use his mom's intimacy toys on himself while letting his dogs do things to him. I immediately told counselors, my parents, and any other adult that would listen. His parents got divorced, dad lost his job, mom moved across the country, and I'm pretty sure he ended up in Zulu, mental health ward at our juvie. Story 28. Not really something I discovered, more witnessed. Sophomore year of high school, the girls were having a sleepover. I'm not one to care about changing in front of one another, sharing clothes. All of that. But this girl, in another girl's bedroom, took her pants off in front of all of us and straight up changed her tampon and threw the used one into the other girl's bedroom trash can. Disturbing to me. Story 29. I discovered that he watched necrophilia videos. I moved away from him, and months later, I found out that he was training for thanatopraxy. Story 30. She befriended the girl and her boyfriend. They were having a rough patch. She listened to them both. She started using the things she told against her, and unsurprisingly, she and the boyfriend ended up having intimacy multiple times. Answer. This happened to me as well, sort of. I was going through a rough patch with my boyfriend at the time, confided everything in my best friend. The whole time she was spending time with him then, when he and I inevitably broke up, they started dating a month later. There was obviously something going on before the breakup. They dated for 5 years. Safe to say we stopped being mates. They ended up breaking up for the exact same reason I broke up. LAL, sucks to be her. Story 31. That my best friend F my husband, while myself, my children, and her spouse and her children were under the same roof. Story 32. A friend I had for like 8 years, he was my best friend, and he suddenly stopped talking to me one day for no reasons. 2 weeks later, I discovered he wasn't paying any bills. He stole like $50K from the company he was working for. He escaped to Europe without telling anybody. Story 33. She didn't shower for 3 days on our trip. It was really hot and humid, so we were all sweaty by the end of each day. Then she used disgustingly strong perfume on her scalp to mask the smell. Story 34. He had once sent explicit photos to someone who turned out to be a catfish, at which point they blackmailed him into doing inappropriate things to his little sister. We are absolutely not friends anymore, which was always really awkward beast. My old roommate was still friends with him, so he would be at the apartment from time to time. I just always had errands to run. Answer. I know people who get caught in these scams can be desperate, but how desperate do you have to be to fall for? We're going to send your male body part pics to all your friends and family. But if you become a pedo with your little sister and send us photos of that, you're off the hook. At that point, I would just tell them, go ahead and send those male body part pics, or tell my family or something. Anything else than what they wanted, because that is 1,000 times worse. Story 35. Found out she was a kleptomaniac when she called for bail. Luckily, my phone was off, so I didn't get the call. She tried to say she was set up. 6 months later, a shop owner blasted her online stealing from them as well. Another excuse. I stopped being friends with her. I think the amount of times I went shopping with her, all the gifts she gave me, and the things that went missing when she was in my house. Story 36. He was arrested for putting hidden cameras in the ladies' toilets and changing rooms in the pub that he owned. He was a bit odd, but I never thought he would do something as insane and gross as that. Story 37. He shared videos of rats being tortured, thinking they were funny. He was immediately unfriended that day. Story 38. He was talking to my ex a bit too much. Told people which girl I liked. He also spread my dating history while lying about his own, and much more. This was my best friend BTW. Story 39. I made a friend at work, and we talked almost every day. One of the few people I would bullshit with. Then one day he casually just started talking about how his wife was thinking he would be at work on certain days, when really he'd be out hooking up with some random girl. We're not friends anymore. Story 40, that he was never a great human being, but he got with a chick about 12 years younger, and she wanted a baby. She was already a single mom before him. He's been a long-time narcissist and alcoholic. She talked him into it. He had a kid at 41. She booted him out for being who he's been after 2 months, and he's basically pissed his life away, and the kid doesn't see him. My fudge-up friend's fault, not the mom's. He's turning 50 soon, and no one speaks to him because he has shoot on everyone too many times. I feel horrible for his kid, but we all have our own families to keep together. Even his family doesn't talk to him. I'll be surprised if he sees 55. Story 41. She falsely accused men. As a survivor myself, that's a huge no, and I think punishable because so many real survivors go through hell to receive justice, and women like her are sick. Story 42. Roommate's boyfriend and best friend got yeast infections at the same time, about a week before she did. Story 43. He just disappeared one day, left his car in the middle of the road running, and disappeared. We later found out he was being searched by Interpol. Story 44. Found out the reason I hadn't heard from him for a while was that he had been convicted of possessing CSA material. Story 45. I was friends with this girl growing up from 13 to 17, and she would sleep with every guy in the neighborhood and never once clean herself. She thought it was some kind of flex, I guess, back then, if you want to call it that, but it was absolutely disgusting, and whenever she sat down in a chair and got up, you can smell the funk from her crotch. Eventually, she started having to go to the doctor because of bad yeast infections and other problems that I found out about, but we wasn't friends no longer after that. Story 46. That he tried to have intimacy with his dog while on substances. Our friendship mysteriously dwindled shortly after that. Story 47. I was childhood best friends with a now adult woman. As we became adults, our friendship severed, and I was truly sad about it. We stayed in touch periodically, but it seemed like her life just went a whole different direction. One day, we spoke via text briefly, and she informed me she had a vaginal infection that was quite serious, and she had to be admitted to the ER for antibiotics intravenously. I was concerned and asked if she needed anything, etc. She said she was fine, just wanted to be home. I mistakenly asked how it happened, or if she knew how it happened, because that is scary. She then informs me that her boyfriend toe-fudged her and cut her with his jagged toenail, which caused the infection, and she let it go a little too long, thinking it would work itself out. I was flabbergasted, and she said I shouldn't kink shame her, and I was a prude. I really haven't been the same since then. Story 48. He had about 10 cats in a 2-bedroom apartment. They never changed the litter boxes. The cats stopped using them. His apartment was on the 2nd level, but you could get a whiff of it from the street about 20 yards away. You could smell him from that distance too, depending on the wind. Their kitchen sink and washer-dryer were broken for months upon end as well, so there was a special sort of eye-watering funk in that place. They got evicted, and animal control took most of their cats. They got a new apartment, and it's starting to get real stinky now. I've told him several times his place is the worst I've ever seen, but he still doesn't clean. Story 49. He eliminated his mother and then committed tragic end while his father was asleep downstairs. Maybe this counts as most disturbing. Story 50. She abused her elderly mother with health issues to the point her mother had to put a restraining order on her, which she violated. She falsely accused people of raping and kidnapping and trying to take down her. She's a pathological liar. She picks on people for their weight and disabilities they can control, and she scams others for money. I don't even want to know what she did to her mother. Story 51. He was actively cheating on his girlfriend constantly, and even with her best friends. One day I hung out with his girlfriend, and in that same day found out she was actively cheating on him, and even with his best friends, that's the day my view on humanity drastically changed. No, I did not fudge her or ever made a move on her. Story 52. She was sleeping with one of her close friends' partner while also trying to help their relationship the entire time. She said she was being as objective when giving advice. She also slept with her boyfriend's brother and had some intimacy involvement with his sister. She cheated on her current boyfriend and now husband with the first guy. Never really took ownership of any of it. Then ghosted me one day. Story 53. My friend told me her BF has screenshotted photos of me from my Instagram that she found on his phone. She's still with him. Answer. My friend found photos of me on her then boyfriend's computer. We're talking 20 years ago. He told her we had dated. I never met or spoke to this man and never would have. He's very far from my type. He acted all sheepish when I did meet him and called him out on it. She ended up marrying and divorcing him. Thankfully, I had very little interaction with them for the 13 years they were together. I didn't approve of the wedding and was very open about it, so I did not attend. She never held that against me. Story 54. Found out a roommate, coworker, and friend, same person, had deeply held racist beliefs. We weren't roommates or friends much longer after that. Story 55. That he was a walking, talking red flag. He is a chronic cheater and major narcissist. He was with his ex-girlfriend who lived with him and his parents. They were engaged and were making plans for the long term. He would go to massage parlors, get escorts, and occasionally women straight from the street. One day his ex found a lot of messages, picture and videos of various women, cuffed her going through his phone, and he mentioned her stomach sank to the floor, crying her eyes out. The worst thing is that after it was all said and done, he acted cold towards the memory of her. He slowly would twist things like, well, maybe if she did this more or didn't do as much of this. He's currently with someone else with a kid. He's already beat him and taken the door from his bedroom because he slammed it a few times. Instead of talking to him with reason and understanding, he decided that setting an example where he'll learn not to do that again is a more effective method. What's worse is he didn't want to hear my advice on how to embrace him, and denied ever taking the door down. Seconds after telling me he did it because his brother-in-law and sister do that to their kids. I feel sorry for the boy and the mom. Well, I'm confident she knows very little, but I'm sure he'll slip up and she'll either settle with him or play the long game. X, it took me years to figure you out as a person. You are a complete piece of shoot. Story 56. I found out that an older cousin of mine that I was close to when I was young eliminated a woman and kept her in his basement and was showing his friends. Story 57. Not a big friend, really. More of an acquaintance that me and my friends would smoke with and buy from, but apparently his GF cheated on him and he eliminated her and buried her in his backyard and went on the run for a bit. He eventually got caught, but the fact it sat next to and passed a blunt to some brutal murderer was insane to think about. Made me realize just how capable anyone truly is at any moment of creating real violence. Scary stuff. Also, one time I saw someone start vigorously self-care and pretty much losing it on the floor in front of my huge group of friends back in high school. We all were tripping balls on mushrooms, but turned out he had some sort of schizotype disorder, and we never heard or saw him in school again. Life be weird, yo. Story 58. He was an exhibitionist, preferred flashing younger women. When he flashed my, now ex-spouse, I threatened to take a baseball bat to his kneecaps. Never had another issue. Story 59. That he was found to have possession of Cat A indecent images of children. I'd known him since high school and was a member of my close group of friends. Even more horrifying was that a number of us had children. Story 60. My high school best friend's brother, who was also in our friend group, went to prison for a lot of CP, possessing and distributing. He was a greasy gamer guy. Think chugging warm code red and eating Doritos while spending hours on WoW. Awkward and always kind of dirty and smelly, but we never assumed anything like that. Looking back on it, it makes sense, but it never crossed our minds back in the day. Story 61. He knew his dad's roommate had groomed in violation his sister and did nothing. The dad knew too. Neither did anything beat C. The roommate said it was her idea. Story 62. A girl I know walked in on her boyfriend sleeping with her mum boy. 16 mum like 36. The mum then got pregnant and kept the child. The girl then literally moved to the other side of the world. Her mum was a bit of a junkie too. Story 63. That they were a intimacy abuser, right as they were attempting to abuse me. Two different friends that happened with at different times. Later in my final year at high school, another friend I discovered was also an intimacy abuser when the minor he was abusing messaged me and asked if I wanted the same kind of pictures she was sending to him. I said no, screenshotted the messages, and took them the next day to the school principal. That guy disliked me now, but really he should dislike himself the most. Story 64. A friend 33 minimums and I 38F were discussing politics. I already knew we had very differing opinions on a lot of things, but it had always been respectful engagement, and we were always willing to consider each other's perspective and reasoning behind our stances. At some point, the convo switched to women who falsely accused men of violation. He felt like women ask for it if they dress a certain type of way. I tried to use myself as an example, as we were very close friends, I thought. Tried to say, if I told you this happened to me, what would be your initial reaction? Unmoved, just kind of blankly stared at me. He has 2 young daughters. Tried to use them as an example. So if your daughter came to you and said she was violation, the first thing you would ask her is what she was wearing. His exact words. I would also ask her where she was and what she was doing. BC, if you are in a certain type of environment, dressed a certain way, and behaving in a certain manner, then she was asking for it. His reasoning was BC, men are primal creatures who have needs that they can't control, so women shouldn't be tempting them. I refused to continue a friendship after that. Story 65. He locked his GF in a cupboard and starved her, whilst apparently fudged her dog. The dog thing I'm not entirely 100 about, but the kidnapping, starvation, locked up lark seems pretty legit. Story 66. That he was molesting his niece and a friend of hers, both under the age of 13 for years. It really shook up our entire friend group, and we all quickly cut him out. Sans one friend who pretended to sympathize and talk to him in prison just so we could all stay up to date. Once we all knew his sentencing, the one friend sent him a letter on all our behalf, pretty much telling him we all hope he suffers. Story 67. She wipes boogers under the car seat. It's normal. My cool brother told me so. She tells me this after I bought a car for a separate friend that she had been driving for a month. Cue me throwing up. Story 68. That he was charged with 11 counts of child porn and dissemination. Nope, I can't. We are no longer friends. Answer, gross. It's horrifying how some normal-seeming people are just evil perverts. My former boss' adult child was busted for 1 count of that. No way would I ever want to be alone with anyone with that sort of charge. I was stunned. His parents were local business leaders, professors, and charitable people. Not that those would make their kid not a criminal, but it was just surprising. Story 69. It was my friend's friend, but while in elementary school, he told me how his friend was getting his mentally challenged sister to perform fellatio on him. That one always stuck with me. Story 70. I had a friend that was accused of violation. I had just met him and he told me it was an accusation that darn near ruined his life. He was super cool with me. Did try to holla at me in the beginning of our friendship, but I told him straight up that I wasn't interested, and he respected that, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt. We were friends for years until one day I invited him to my birthday party. He told me he got suspended from work because he was hanging out with a girl that wanted to be serious with him and got accused of intimacy assault. After that, I was like, nah. 2 accusations and you expect me to believe you didn't do anything? I ain't that stupid. Story 71. She had a fake Instagram where she pretended to have cancer. Didn't know if she was trying to scan people or just wanted attention. Story 72. He was arrested and then found guilty of making and producing indecent images involving children and animals. He was a bit of a dodgy character as he used to have these get-rich-quick schemes that never worked for him, but 1000 never saw that coming. And still cannot, for the life of me, when you read what he was convicted of, understand how he got off so lightly, community service, and that was it. He's not even in the intimacy offenders register anymore because he never went to jail. Link to news article about it. Story 73. My best friend was poisoning her child to the point she had 44 hospital admissions and ICU stays in the 1 year prior to her being caught, not to mention all of the ones prior to that. She's had 0 admissions in the 12 YRs since she has been out of her mother's care. Story 74. I know a surprisingly large amount of child abusers. There's just something wrong with the town I grew up in. Story 75. Not a friend, but an old shipmate. Wondered how life turned out for him and his beautiful family, a wife and 2 daughters. He was convicted of intimacy, assaulting 85 children at day Aries run by his wife. She had no clue and was not charged. I believe he will be dying in Rayford before he times out. Story 76. Not a friend, but I knew a girl in high school who got into a car accident by running a red light because she was on her phone. The man who was in the other car died. He was 91 years old and had been a fire chief for over 30 years, retiring only 7 years before. People were devastated. I remember talk of how daddy was going to get her out of it. Gossip, but she left for a few months and came back like nothing ever happened. They ruled his passing an accident, but I will never forget. She was a preppy girl a few years older than me, and I was emo, so I don't even think she noticed that I was there. She was talking to 2 of her friends, and she said, and I quote, "He was old, he was going to die anyway." I will never ever forget this encounter with evil. I was 15 and I am now 30 and I have never heard anything so disgusting come out of someone's mouth in real life. Story 77. Back in 98, first grade, recess. Both my best friend and I had separately decided that on that day it was time to share our terrible, horrible, shameful secret with each other. She was a booger eater. I was a booger eater too. We're still best friends to this day, but we share other hobbies now. Story 78. A guy I was friends with for years prior to this incident told me he had a system of tells he looked for on dating sites to find women who were abuse survivors or otherwise traumatized vulnerable because he considered them easier lays and less likely to insist on him using condoms. Bragged about how all he had to do was pay on the first date and how some of them didn't even need that. Got a new burner phone every couple of months, so Crazy could never track him down. Basically, imagine the dentist system from ISIP without creativity or satire. Proof that incels don't magically grow out of their misogyny when they start getting laid. Story 79. My friend cheated on her husband with a teenager. She was 34, he was 17. Fine, whatever, people cheat. Not the worst part. A couple years later, after she and her husband divorced, she introduced him to her teenage daughters, and they both had intimacy with him too. I literally got up and walked out after she told me about it, laughing. Story 80. Ex-friend was accused of pedophilia. Spun a web of lies so well, many people actively defended him. We, as his friends, did until we started catching lies years down the line. His behavior turned abusive, so we cut ties entirely. He was so good at this that he befriended a father with young kids to defend him in court, right up until sentencing, which is when the poor guy found out his new best friend wasn't all that innocent after all, and he'd been completely fooled like us. And what's worse, he pleaded guilty in court about touching a kid in public, which let him off from being charged for very illegal content on his phone, which is fudge madness to me. Guy got no prison sentence despite having a history of dodgy shoot. Again, we never knew about it. Just community service and some sort of rehabilitation. Underneath this, I found out so many other lies and things he'd done. I have no idea where it begins and ends. Some really nasty stuff which was directly levied at me behind my back, his so-called best friend. I was sick with grief over Christmas, and out of all the things that I found out from friends, this is the worst. None of it comes close to this. Story 81. My very good friend worked at the same restaurant sports bar establishment as her fiancé. She cheated on him with a customer who recorded her giving him a BJ. The customer showed the video to at least one coworker, who then told me. This was when we were in our late 20s. Our friendship hasn't been the same since, so beyond disrespectful. Story 82. These comments range from they wiped their boogers everywhere to they were a pedophile who drowned a litter of puppies and abused their mom. Story 83. That he had fudge a mutual friend's wife on our couch. He lived with me and my fiancé, now husband. He set it up so that we would discover him private pictures on the couch in the living room just after, claiming, OMG, I didn't realize I fell asleep. Luckily, I walked through the door first and not my 5-year-old. This was 2 days before our wedding, and we told him to find a new place to live by the time we were back from our honeymoon. Story 84. I discovered that a former friend of mine got charged for sending a video to her boyfriend of her touching a dog inappropriately, and she didn't tell me what was going on directly, but from someone on social media who posted a news article about it. Story 85. I was friends with a girl from college. She got married, like 250 ppl wedding. In less than a year, she invited me to dinner at her home, her husband. She suggested we have drinks the next weekend. We met at a bar, had one drink. I went to bathroom, and by the time I came back, she was making out a guy at the bar. She used me as an alibi. I wanted nothing of it. She admitted it was going on before the wedding. She was friends with another girl in group who was married to her husband's brother. I lost touch. Fast forward 10 years. She is getting divorced. She continued the affair the entire time she was married. Why get married? Because he AP was married. Story 86. Oh, I've got a bunch. These are just a couple. Found out an old friend from high school, Mormon but just left the church, extremely sheltered knave, was abducted by the cartel, pimped out, forced to make non-consensual adult content, and eliminate. I only found out about this because I saw adult content of her on Reddit and told one of my old friends about it, who then told me the full story. My old best friend would apparently spit on the carpet inside homes. We only found out because he did it at another friend's house, and he got angry when we told him to stop. He refused to stop because, it doesn't matter, bro, you don't get to control me, so he got banned from their house, LOL. Just found out a couple years ago that decades previously, my aunt lied to a 21-year-old man about her age when she was 14. She told him she was 19, she looked 19, and in college, so they slept together. She then went, ha ha, now you're gonna buy me whatever I want and sleep with me whenever I want, or else I'm going to the police. He called her bluff, and she got him sent to prison and labeled a intimacy offender for the rest of his life. I don't talk to her anymore, and this wasn't even the final straw. She's done a lot of equally horrible and even worse things. Story 87. My spouse's friend, he was surprised to hear she was involved with underage minors. It was on the news. She left town to escape the shame. Story 88. That they were an ableist C. She called me out of nowhere one day when she knew I was having a rough time to say that we can't be friends anymore because your autism just makes you so annoying to deal with sometimes. I'd known her 16 years at the time. Unbelievably, she's now a teacher. God help her poor students the second they're not perfect enough for her. Story 89. Told my friend that I was concerned about her teeth and asked her if she brushed every day, and she said she only brushed once every week or so because she was lazy. Her whole jerk mouth was a nasty layout. Story 90. So, not a friend, but someone living at a community I worked at. Older gentleman living alone. Didn't have a car and seemed to be suffering some cognitive decline as he was in his early 80s. One day, the cops show up looking for someone with a pretty serious warrant. I have a dozen people come to mind, and none of them are this guy. My jaw just about hit the desk when the officer named the older gentleman. He ends up arrested at a store down the road the same day. The charge? Repeated intimacy abuse of a child. I still haven't gotten over it. My partner had even occasionally given him a ride to the store after dropping me off at work, and the thought that he was in my car makes me sick. Story 91. The guy she married is a grody slob and turned her into a grody slob. We were housemates twice during the friendship, and she was never like this. Their house is a disgusting bachelor pad that didn't evolve after she moved in. Every surface is piled with crap and dust. The yards are always overgrown and filled with motorcycles and lawnmowers and cigarette butts. The last time I went there, the bathroom and toilet was as dirty, piss-covered, and nasty-smelling as a dive bar. It was so appalling I had to leave. They are in their 40s, people, and no one really knows it. Due to that and a bunch of other grievances that have cropped up over the years, I had to let the friendship go. Story 92. Two friends that did not know each other showed me books on drinking their urine. Both became upset when I stated that urine is a waste product. In fact, the woman became very angry. No, never intimate with her. She was a rock climbing partner. I do not communicate with either anymore. Story 93. She would facilitate plans between me and her boyfriend of 12 years so she could go cheat on him with a guy she wanted to set me up with. Her man and I were 100 platonically friends, and I would never even think of hooking up with the boyfriend of my best friend. But part of me believes that she was hoping it would happen so she could feel justified in cheating on him. Story 94. She started having an affair. Made husband leave the family home. Went on a trip, which I had to finance her flight home because they fought and he was flying his very young employee to their vacation spot. And she had no money. She had seen sexting messages between the two as well. She took him back pretty much immediately. Then she would leave her kids alone all night overnight until early a.m. because she was at her boyfriend's house. Multiple times a week. A lot. Her oldest was 12 and she also had younger ones. That was the straw for me. I knew we couldn't be friends because her affair was so gross. But how she neglected her children was it for me? I can't be friends with someone like that. Story 95. I knew him for years because we were both involved in the same niche of sport. He was very friendly, down to earth, easy to talk to. I can count the number of times we shared a hug or a drink or just good conversation in an after party. Then the pandemic hit and I didn't see him for a while, as everyone in this niche sport took a 2-year hiatus. When the sport resumed, I stopped seeing him around, but I didn't really think much of it. Turned out he was in jail. He'd been molesting his stepdaughters for years. He's now serving a lengthy prison term. I had no idea, none of us did. It might sound weird to phrase it this way, but when you find out that someone you liked and considered a friend is really a monster behind closed doors, you go through a grieving process. Because the Greg, fake name, I thought I knew was not the real Greg, far from it. It's been over a year since I found out, and I feel like I'm still coming to terms with it. I think of the friendly, personable Greg I hugged, drank with, hung out with, but he never really existed. He was a monster hiding in plain sight all along. There's a part of me that doesn't want to believe he did these things. I know he did. I know that his stepdaughters did not lie, and I know there is video evidence of some of what he did. But I don't know how to reconcile the Greg I knew with Greg the pedophile. Maybe I never will. Story 96. Went out with a guy and he told me a story about he and several friends vandalizing cabins in the Mad Hood area just for fun. That was the end of that. Story 97. I had long-term friends who were so dislike and bigoted that I pretty much quit hanging out with them. I could not have imagined that deep inside the people I thought I knew, they had such venom toward people based on skin color. You really can't tell by looking. They are losing out on knowing some very interesting people. Story 98. My ex-husband used to bite his nails and then hide a pile of them on top of the fridge to chew on later. Story 99. Found out my roommate never washes his hands after using the bathroom. Watched him go straight from toilet to kitchen to make us sandwiches. Had to throw mine away. Story 100. That they had slept with their stepdaughter too, actually, though they are both dead now. One through tragic end, the other through overdose of male body part pills. Story 101. I found out that my friend didn't bathe for weeks. That was really disgusting, and I talked to her because I love her so much. Story 102. The way she berated her son, BC, he wasn't Harvard material. Saw him come down the stairs one day at a women's get-together. He looked like a scared animal. She was obsessed with her 3 sons going to top private schools in the DC area and then on to the Ivy League. I also had 3 sons but never ever pressured them. They were responsible by nature, probably seeing their dad working hard. Not to brag, but my youngest attended MIT Brown. Hers went to okay colleges, just not what she had wished. A few years later, hubby met her husband and told me the good news that their son was at the University of Maryland. Answer. I just wanted to say a story somewhat similar. When I was younger, a teacher lived near me and would drop me to school. Anywho, she has a daughter, same age as me. I remember when exams were coming up, so she gave us a short quiz to fill out. I scored higher than her daughter. I remember how she cursed out her daughter and dropped her home and told her no games. She was so sad and crying when she dropped me off. I told my mom, and my mom noticed that she expected me to be dumber than her daughter. Also pressures her daughter. Story 103. In high school, I had one of my homegirls sleep over. She used to have a smell. I never judged her for it, but it was bothering me a lot since she was staying at my house. She slept in my bed with me. I sneakily convinced her to shower by telling her I was going to shower, asking if she wanted to go first. The smell was still there after the shower. Also, after I fell asleep, she snuck into my uncle's room to suck his male body part. Story 104. She let her dog lick at her yeast infection discharge. We did not remain friends for long after I found out. Story 105. Not a close friend, but he was our roommate for a while. A year or 2 after he moved out, we found out he was being charged for pedophilia. Story 106. I was living with my best friend from high school. There was one bathroom. Her period lasted 9-10 days, and she never took out the bathroom trash until the next month. Yes, I told her a 10-day period is a little odd. No, she did not want to see a doctor. We're no longer friends because she had other issues, but that was one that stood out. Story 107. My friend slept with someone that they knew was in a committed relationship. Obviously ruined that person's relationship, and they felt no remorse. Nothing. Thought it was hot they destroyed their relationship to sleep with them. They never dated after the person's relationship ended. It was just an exciting night. Gives me the ICK. Story 108. Guy I worked with for years, whom I considered a really nice guy, coached kids' athletics, etc. The entire wholesome neighbor shtick. Started a successful sports massage business app. A few years later, he is in the news for being suspended after complaints from 2 ex-female clients. That story caused over a dozen other women to come forward, and now he is spending 10 years in jail for inappropriate touching and intimacy assault, including a girl aged 15. Story 109. She took her other best friend along with her to visit my situationship dude, without my knowledge, of course. Had a group scene with him, and she got pregnant by him. I cut them all off. Story 110. Not strictly my friend, but friend of the family. My mom had a friend from work with whom we were kind of close. She had 2 kids from previous relationships and lived with the father of the third one. The guy was great. Very caring father, quite handy, cooked like a chief. My mom and him used to throw some MasterChef tier competitions. Great mechanic, allegedly former military with tons of stories to tell. So yeah, he too became a friend of ours until my mom's friend dumped him when her oldest daughter, 7 at the time, finally told her that he had many inappropriate behaviors towards her. Taking it to court, we also learned that basically everything he ever told us about him, past in the military, current occupation, age, religion, was a series of intricated lies. I never saw him again, but it just chills my bones every time I think about it. Story 111. A friend from high school started appearing on my Instagram all of a sudden. Turns out he runs a new age spiritual cult and has been accused of intimacy abuse by multiple women. But the worst, by far, is a super close high school and middle school friend of mine who got into politics. He was the Secretary of Labor for the governor of our state, and he would create fake labor disputes to shut down business. He made himself a millionaire stealing from people. He ran an online bullying campaign against a mutual friend who criticized the government. And after the governor was sentenced to jail, rightly so, he somehow got away with it. A few years ago, I saw he had been arrested for domestic abuse. This dude was my close friend. Our grandmas were friends. His mom was so lovely, but he turned out to be fudge evil. Story 112. I turned EO1. Not a friend in the end for many reasons, but long after I cut this guy out of my life, I learned that during the time when my ex and I shared an apartment with this dude, he had witnessed my ex being intimacy assaulted while extremely intoxicated and had, for years afterward, been telling people the story of the incident by framing it as my ex cheating on me. My ex never told me about the incident when we were together. I ended up reaching out to him after I heard what this dude had been saying and got the real story then. The fact that this piece of shoot was going around telling this story like it was some funny anecdote was absolutely disgusting. He was such a fudge worm. I hope he's got a shoot life. Story 113. He left his wife, 3 kids, and a good job as a meat cutter at Fresh Market to go manage a Taco Bell and bang his assistant manager because he missed being able to party and do coke whenever he wanted. That is, until she had their daughter. Now he's trying to get back with his wife because 1 child support payment is easier than 4. She's having none of it. Fudge you, Mike. You don't deserve those kids. Story 114. His 3-year-old wouldn't go to bed. Typical kid making up excuses to come out and say goodnight for the 4th time or whatever it was. He spanked the kid right in front of me like I'd just be cool with it. It was over a diaper and probably didn't leave a bruise, but it was the zero hesitation to just smack his kid hard enough to scare the heck out of him for coming out of his room again. No drinking involved, no yelling, no stern warnings. He had just had enough, I guess. It was okay because that was how he was raised in his words. Story 115. He was a fudge pedophile. I even had him over for dinner once. He and his girlfriend had been a clients, and he seemed to be so polite to women, and he was stern on guys who were rude to their chicks. He was kind, polite, and generous. Found out he had been with her since he was in his early 20s. She had been 11. I fudge, dislike this piece of shoot, and hope he dies. There's so many of these people, though. When you look at a predator app, Jesus, they can be polite, hold strong morals, have a great work ethic, and also be an evil being. Ever notice the iPhone says pedophile is an incorrectly spelled word? Weird, unless I am spelling it wrong. Story 116. He gave me an old phone of his, but forgot to delete the pics. And there were a bunch of him sticking his finger in his butt, taken by squatting over a mirror. We're not friends anymore, for a variety of reasons. Story 117. They think intimacy assault is funny and will giggle while they watch it happen. Glad I ditched them. Story 118. My best friend and I were talking on FaceTime a few years back, and she was picking at her toenails and skin. Then she grabbed her foot to her mouth and bit off the dead skin from her foot. I dislike feet. I am grossed out by it. I told her, what TRFEW? And she is like, it's normal. No, it's not normal. It's fudge disgusting. I let her kiss me with that mouth on my cheek. Ew. Story 119. That he has stolen valor after 10 years of friendship pretending to be something he's not, and the wife supports it. Story 120. We were in college and my buddy started seeing a married woman he met at his work. He bragged constantly about doing anal with her, but come to find out it was because she had herpes outbreaks frequently. He let the secret slip out on a tipsy night. Story 121. She cheated on her boyfriend with his brother. I only found out because they asked if I'd group seen. Yeah, no THX. Story 122. They poop in the shower. I was so grossed out. I was like, bro, what the fudge? At least let me get out and towel off first, bro. Story 123. That they were cheating on their spouses instead of dealing with their issues. One looked right at me after telling me and said, if you tell anyone, I'll eliminate you. Story 124. Isidri Surnturum. I wouldn't say this was a friend, but it was a guy I had some drinks with a few times, got to know his friends, went on a run together. He, gay, ended up sleeping in the same bed as another friend, probably at least in their late 20s. And he told me he saw his friend was hard and went to feel him up. His friend was asleep. He told his story as if it was totally normal. Very distressing, and even more so that such behavior with a friend was normalized in his story. Story 125. House sitting for married friends. Walked around the bed to open a window to get some fresh air in the house. Felt a bunch of hard, crunchy spots under my bare feet. I found where she'd spit his load a few dozen times. Wanted to blow my fudge brains out. Bare feet. Story 126. He told me he has cheated on every relationship he was in and how he did it. He has kids too. Kinda hit me hard. Can't really be friends with person who does things like this. Story 127. She would take advantage of my other friends when they were drinking. Like, as far as I know, she wasn't bi, but she would hook up and get intimacy with my friends when they were tipsy. I never knew a girl could be a predator like this. I ran into her recently, and though I enjoyed our friendship at one time, I can't look past that behavior. No one should. Story 128. Gotta be the nonce for me. Met him at work, ended up being mates with him for a long time. I had distanced myself from him after a different kind of horrific incident, and then he disappeared. Next thing, he's in local court listings, charged with making, possessing, distributing CSA images of the most depraved category. Judge's words. Arsehole didn't even get jailed, and he was found guilty. Story 129. A former good friend of mine is allegedly a pedo. I only became aware of the allegations through a mutual friend, and as much as I don't want to believe it, from what I heard, it's pretty darn. Story 130. Co-worker and friend for over 10 years. Cuffed and stuffed at work by the FBI. Lots of CP on his computer. Some of the things he said over the years made sense suddenly. Deleted and blocked. Won't be out for a long time. Story 131. In college, I had a close friend who became my roommate. He had made numerous comments about only wiping once. He would occasionally leave streaked underwear sitting on his side of the room. It was a long semester. Story 132. My friend, now ex-friend OFC, kind of poofed out of nowhere. I wondered where he went since all his socials disappeared, and he was a popular cosplayer. He made good money from Patreon and Etsy, so this was weird. Plus, I was going to help him make a costume and do a fancy photo shoot with it, so I'm thankful that never came to. Turns out he was take down multiple cats. Also was majorly abusive to his GF. Made me sick to my stomach. Story 133. Another ex-boyfriend I had would leave his leftover food everywhere. There was ramen noodles left on the coffee table for days, a plate of nachos with cheese that laid on the floor of his attic for actual weeks. My senior year, I would go to his house and hang out with all his friends. One of his friends had absolutely no boundaries with him and ended up eating out of his family peanut butter jar with a butter knife. And talking double dipping and everything. He took the knife out and put the peanut butter jar back once they left. Never ate at his house. Story 134. I had a buddy who demonstrated he was able to engulf a doorknob with his foreskin. Didn't even disinfect it before or after. Story 135. She got knocked up by her much older boss, then found out he was married. She moved in with him anyway. A couple months later, she ditched him and married baby daddy's twin brother. Story 136. She made false violation accusations against a dude in our friend group and tried to get everyone to side with her. He was a sleazy jerk, so it was believable. She kept changing the story and lost track of who she told what. As a SA survivor, I'm inclined to believe survivors. Made me question everything, though. I dislike that I can't trust PPL after this. Story 137. Not a friend per se, but just the neighborhood kid all our parents made us include growing up. He would pee on the floor of his finished basement daily, and it was carpet. Just piss everywhere. Whole house stunk. Took his parents way too long to find out. We didn't see too much of old piss after that. He eventually went away to a school for troubled boys, or something like that. Story 138. Ex-close friend of mine. He did it twice, almost a decade apart. In 2016, went out of his way to sabotage a relationship I was having with a girl. Deliberately flirted and messaged her behind my back. Then denied it, got her to deny it also. Then months later, she admitted to me that she had caught feelings for him. That was the end of that relationship. She moved to Canada, he fudged off to university. I ended up in a mental health ward due to multiple tragic end attempts. 2024, met a woman at church, liked her, played it safe for the first few months building up a friendship. He was back from uni at the time and in church as well. I thought things were okay. He also liked her, and he couldn't handle the fact that her and I got on. He'll explain why later. I picked up on signs that maybe he liked her and had several conversations with him that if he was interested in her, say something and he'll respect it. I was honest that I liked her, but was being cautious having been hurt prior. Her and I went for food one evening. A few days later, he got pissed at me because we went for food. At my birthday party, she sat with me the entire evening. He left midway through the night abruptly and made an excuse about a friend needing him. 2 days later, I get a message from a mutual acquaintance calling me a bad friend, and I know he likes this girl. So stop flirting with her and being a male body part head. I was already on the fence about asking her out, but wanted to give my friend the heads up that I was going to. Honorable thing to do. We arrange a call for Thursday night. He asked to call me on the Wednesday when I've got plans with church small group where the girl is also present at. She leave abruptly during stating she isn't feeling well. Friend and I call on Thursday evening. I bring up the message and he says, "Oh, it's nothing like that, blah, blah, blah." lying to me. I then say that, in planning to ask this girl out on a date, he stops me mid-sentence and says, "Oh, I spoke to her last night, and we are going on a date when I get back from working away." I then find out months later that he had been seeing her for months at this point. As Fudge Buddy's side note, he worked for the church at this point, as well as a youth pastor. She tried to maintain a friendship with me. I cut him off. She realized soon after how much of a prick he was, and how manipulative he could be, and that he orchestrated things to his favor. She then moved to a separate part of the country. I cut all contact in January this year. Screw toxic people. Let's say trauma-related tragic. Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. If you'd like to see more content like this, you might be interested to know that I've created another channel with a similar theme, especially for those of you who enjoy what I do. I'll leave a link in the description, and I hope to see you there. Take care.